Hey y'all, the book I decided to do today was The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. And in this podcast, I just kind of want to go into some of my introductory thoughts, some context on the time period, and why I chose this book, because so far I have really enjoyed it. Now, The Things They Carried is about Tim O'Brien's experience in the Vietnam War. He served in 1968, and for a little bit of context, 1968 was one of the, if not the, turning points and roughest parts of the war. You had things like the Tet Offensive in early January, and LBJ's continued failure to make peace talks just destroyed public opinion about the war. I picked this book because I knew it was about the Vietnam War. I didn't know exactly what it was going to be about. I could guess from the title, but this is an incredibly interesting time period for me. The Vietnam War is the time period where America lost its innocence. It's lost its profound trust in the government, I would say. Things like the Pentagon Papers and Watergate and all of this happening. And this has had a profound effect on our politics with people that are considered Washington elites or people who are experienced in politics. That's treated as a negative thing now due to such an inherent distrust in our government. And so far, I really like this book. There aren't necessarily chapters in the book, but there are I guess I've gotten to 2 points where it ends and there is another title. And so far what it has covered in incredible detail, which surprises me because most of the time veterans don't like to discuss their service, is Tim opens the book with just discussing the things they carried. He talks about the radios, the food, the cards, the keepsakes, how much they weigh, and how they're always carrying something on their back, whether that be physical or emotional through their gear, or the emotional burdens they carry. O'Brien does a really good job of he narrates from the point of view of his lieutenant in his squad, Lieutenant Cross, and it takes pages to describe the love for a girl that Cross had before he went overseas, and all of his regrets about not trying to pursue her more, and his desires and his insecurities that while she may end her letters with "I love you" or "love so-and-so," it doesn't mean that she loves him. And that the one date they went on, he didn't feel any sort of spark. And eventually this comes to a head when Lieutenant Cross's daydreaming ends up having one of his squad members, a man by the name of Lavender, killed due to his negligence. And O'Brien does a very good job of narrating the emotions in the just the awful gut feeling that Cross has, to where he eventually burns his letters and his memorabilia for this girl that he likes and realizes that he needs to move on. Now, other than Lieutenant Cross, I haven't gotten incredibly far, but O'Brien talks a little bit about his experiences and how he said the average age of his squad mates was about 19 to 20 years old. So he described a very childlike and adolescent atmosphere in his squad, and how people would play and joke, but that playing and joking was interspersed by what he used a very interesting term. He said acidic boredom. It was different than regular boredom in the sense that you would be sitting or prone somewhere with your gear waiting, and you would think, this isn't so bad, but you would feel a constant nagging. He described it as acid dropping from your chest and sizzling on your vital organs. And eventually that fear and that boredom would build and then be interspersed by just very brief, terrifying moments of violence, where he described everybody losing themselves and sobbing like babies and crying out to God and their family. And eventually people would get back up and they would recollect themselves and carry on. And when I first picked up this book, I thought this I thought this book was going to be like a statistical thing. I thought it was going to be like an analysis of the things they carried in the standard gear, and then maybe O'Brian interviewing veterans and a kind of extrapolating their experiences and writing their accounts and interpreting the burdens they carried in Vietnam. But no, O'Brian is a veteran, and that really surprised me because veterans are incredibly hesitant to describe their service. They generally are, the worse it is, the less they want to talk about it. And from what I have read so far, O'Brian not only served in a very tumultuous time of the war, but he was also incredibly morally conflicted before he even went over. He was a college student who was drafted. In the book, he describes how he felt just hot pressure behind his eyes reading his draft letter. And eventually, as he lives with this fear and this doubt throughout the summer before he is drafted, he is constantly debating on whether or not he should make a break to Canada. And one day at work, he just says that something breaks, and he feels like something very important and fundamental to him leak out inside of him, like his heart is broken at this decision he's facing. He describes himself quickly rushing home and driving to the border, where he spends 6 days at a lodge with a old man. And he doesn't describe what exactly the old man did to talk him out of it, but he just says that cleared his conscience. And he describes the old man in great detail. He said he was about 80 years old, and that the silence the old man had, it was an aggressive silence, just helped him. Not only him not prying allowed him to process his emotions, but the distance from his old town and the people's expectations the expectations that people had for him in his town. He grew up in a very conservative, a good old boy hometown with expectations that you were to go fight the commies, you were to go beat off the Red Scare. And the book describes all of this doubt that O'Brian feels. I think it's very powerful the way he writes. His writing is incredibly powerful to me. And overall, so far, I have greatly enjoyed this book. I love the time period it's set in. I love the emotional struggle that O'Brian is showing from not only himself, but from his compatriots. And I hope that it keeps this emotional intensity and vigor throughout the story, because I pick up this book and I cannot put it down. That's all I really have to say about it so far. It's a great book, and I hope it stays this great all the way through.